Listen, man, my blood has been boiling for a while on MSNBC. It's kind of been, sort of going up and up lately, just because I've been more realizing and just sort of understanding more the biases they have towards Bernie Sanders. And I kind of realized that not only is MSNBC just straight garbage and completely worthless as a news organization, but they are certainly no doubt worse than CNN. And they're worse in terms of treating someone like Bernie Sanders specifically than Fox News is. Now, in totality, is MSNBC worse than Fox News? Of course not. But when it comes to treating Bernie Sanders, they really are. But I can safely say that MSNBC is certainly worse than CNN, and I feel that way because, to me, MSNBC has a direct, outright, 100% out in your face objective of F Bernie Sanders. We don't like Bernie Sanders. Our goal is to undercut Bernardino Sanders, okay? That's the outright goal of MSNBC. We want to protect the establishment, okay? That's what we want to do. We can't have Bernie Sanders in office because that poses a real threat to our status quo and our entire machine. Where CNN is more like, we try to take everything neutral, blah, 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 blah. They have Cenk Uygur on sometimes, they have Anna Kasparian on sometimes, and it's not as biased because while there's certainly still CNN biases, it's not outright, like, overarching bias of, like, we hate Bernie and that's our goal. MSNBC's total goal is to just hate Bernie Sanders, to take down Bernard Sanders. That is the goal of MSNBC, and that's why I hate them. That's why they're a trash can of a news organization. Nobody should watch them. They are literally useless. I think I'd rather have you watch Jimmy Dore than MSNBC. And you know my feelings about Jimmy Dore, but this is really garbage. So this panel right here is Meet the Press with Sleepy Eyes Chuck Todd, and they have three people on here, and they're talking about Warren and Bernie Sanders and what they're doing here. And this makes me really wary, I don't remember which one to use, about Elizabeth Warren, because the fact that people like this speak so highly of her is a warning sign, okay? That is a warning sign. So let's hear them out.
What I think is interesting is that Elizabeth Warren she's bringing this whole coalition together that is slightly different from the Sanders coalition of 2016.
No, it's not. That's not true at all. And if we actually look over here, right here, this is a graphic that references a Pew Research Center poll. And so if you can see this here, basically it has Bernie at 53% of Bernie supporters are women. Elizabeth Warren's has 49%. But if you look here at the race, literally 71% of Warren's supporters are white. And also, she has 58% of the college grads supporting her. So it means, like, she's got basically her coalition. It's not really a coalition. Her support is essentially, comprised of people who are these sort of elite, sort of, educated people in college. And obviously, college is a good thing and people who are educated are a good thing. But a lot of those people tend to be very sort of snobbish. So her base seems to just be basically people who are these sort of white, very elitist people. Now, 71% white is very serious, and Bernie's is only 49. So I don't know why no one's talking about how, all of Elizabeth Warren's supporters are just white. Of course, they only talk about that Bernie Sanders, especially when it's false. Bernie Sanders is a crazy amount of colored, or people who are not white support. Don't really like the word colored. But, so I find it really ridiculous that there's even a comment being made because it's just an outright lie. It's just an outright lie.
African Americans, younger people. Obviously, Bernie Sanders have some of the young millennials, but she's building
some of the young millennials. He has a plurality of them, almost a majority. Again, another instance of them downplaying Bernardino Sanders. He has a plurality, almost a majority of them, not some of them.
Have some of the young millennials, but she's building this broader coalition that's more diverse and more sustainable in the long run. Bernie Sanders was never able to do that in 2016 with one other candidate in the race. Yeah. It's just a fascinating dynamic.
She also has a better ground game than people have given her.
Organizationally, there's no doubt. There's no doubt.
Huge ground game.
I thought it was.
I haven't seen the evidence of any sort of, like, remarkable ground game from Elizabeth Warren. But Bernie Sanders is notorious for having a great ground game. That's how he functions. That's Bernie Sanders, man. He's a ground game machine. That's what he does.
Interesting today, a lot of theorizing. What does an economic downturn do? Is this good for Biden, bad for Warren, good for Warren, good? And I've heard Dual sort of say, well, actually, it could help both Warren and Biden for a time. Bill, where are you in this?
Weird. Why do you only mention Warren and Biden? Why is Sanders not in there? Weird.
I mean, of course, it's hard to tell. I think it helps Warren, I guess. I have the sense, because I think, look, the key question for me on Warren is she reassuring enough to swing voters, both within the Democratic primaries and then ultimately in the general election, or not? Is she more like Sanders, whom I regard as unacceptable to an awful lot of these swing voters?
That's a lie as well, by the way. All that needs to happen is Bernie just needs to pull those, Rust Belt states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Those are the states he needs to pull. And obviously the deciding factor for those people are trade deals and free trade. And he's to the left of Donald Trump on free trade. So, instead of being like Donald Trump, where he's like, passing NAFTA 2.0 and not pulling out of NAFTA, Bernie's actually going to do those things. So, he's going to win those swing states. He's going to win those, re-win those blue wall states. So your analysis is simply off there. And, I think Warren might be able to pull some of those people, but I'm not going to lie to you. I have a really, really hard time believing that Elizabeth Warren will be able to pull enough or be able to pull more of those or enough of those to win back those states from Donald Trump. Honestly, I have a hard time believing that, to be honest with you. But if you don't know who Bill Kristol is, he's a neocon. He's someone who's a never-Trumper, and so he's looking for a Democrat who can possibly, unseat Trump. So I've always found it really hilarious when it's like we're taking advice from Republicans on who the Democratic nominee should be and who can win as a Democratic, nominee. Like, why would we take a Republican's opinion on that? You have a clear conflict of interest, and you're going to be wrong. So you have a conflict of interest because you as a Republican were not going to say, yeah, I think Bernie Sanders has the best chance to win because he's going to perform really well in the swing states. You'd never say that because you hate Bernie Sanders. And this is what I mean by I'm worried by Elizabeth Warren now, is because if people like this are so accepting of her, and there were already reports and news articles about how, hey man, Wall Street is sort of begrudgingly supporting Elizabeth Warren, meaning they hate Bernie, but they'll hesitantly support Elizabeth Warren. That is really concerning to me because it's an indication that these people are actually okay with Elizabeth Warren, and I think that's pretty problematic if you ask me, man.
People voted for Hillary and so forth. Or is she more like, could she end up being acceptable to people whose first instinct is to go for normalcy and go for Biden? I don't know the answer to that. I think she's moved to being more acceptable during the course of this campaign. I don't buy it all, incidentally, the Sanders. I mean, Sanders can try to stay in. He could stay in 2016 because it was just him and Hillary. If Warren beats Sanders in Iowa and New Hampshire, Sanders is gone. He can stay in.
Right.
No one's going to vote for him.
I think Andrew is right.
No one's going to vote for him. But he won't get 15% of the vote. He'll get no delegates.
The thing about Warren, where I think you're correct, Warren has an economic message, but it is broader than Bernie's and it's more detailed.
How is it broader than Bernie's? That doesn't make sense. And how is it more detailed? She's just basically been just stealing Bernie's platform this entire time, to be completely frank with you. I mean, I believe she had signed on to Bernie's free college education bill in the Senate. Like, these are all ideas that Bernie has been pushing since 2016. And Warren's just sort of jumping on the train.
Yeah, no, there's a competency issue that I think threshold that she can cross quicker. Anyway, Andrea, Bill, Adrian, thank you all.
Big yikes. And then obviously Sleepy Eyes Chuck Todd is basically saying, Bernie's not competent enough. Elizabeth Warren, of course, is competent. Now, I don't think that Elizabeth Warren is incompetent, to be honest with you. She definitely seems like a pretty competent person. Although I have serious doubts about her judgment and trusting her judgment. She's made a lot of bad judgment calls. I'm especially concerned with her decisions for politicking. Now, what I mean by that is, like, when you're a politician, you're going to have to make certain strategic positions. Okay, you're going to have to take certain strategic positions. She always ends up on the wrong side of them. So, like, when she didn't endorse Bernie Sanders in 2016 because she knew she was going to run in 2020 and she didn't want to alienate any Clinton supporters. To me, that's like, yo, you suck. Like, I hate you. That's what that is to me. So, I have serious worries about her judgment in general. But to talk more about MSNBC here, this panel is like the perfect example of why I hate MSNBC and why it's the worst news organization. Now, Fox News is worse, I know, but Trust me, man, MSNBC is horrible. They're doing a big detriment to society by just pushing corporate garbage. All of these people on here are just plastic, they've all got Botox and plastic surgery, and they're all just spouting a bunch of nonsense, corporate, talking points. And again, I want to repeat here. And by the way, I like how they don't have like a single progressive person who supports Bernie. There's not a single one. It's a bunch of corporate shills. Not a single person who supports Bernie Sanders. Even CNN, like Chris Cuomo will have on Cenk Uygur. Like, he's had him on like 3-4 times or something like that. He's been on Brian Stelter's show. Anna's been on CNN. Like, bruh, bring on someone who supports Bernie like once in a while, dude. Come on. Like, you guys suck. I hate MSNBC with the burning passion because MSNBC has an outright goal of, we hate Bernardino Sanders, and just basically, honestly, it's a stated mission at this point. Like, we're just going to dedicate ourselves to just taking down the man, himself, Bernardino Sanders, basically. And it's just terrible. They're a waste of time. They, again, as I said, they do a detriment to society by doing this. But MSNBC is horrible, dude. And I cannot tell you how much I hate it. Chuck Todd sucks, of course. And all of these panelists are terrible, including Bill Kristol and the other, women who clearly have some sort of Botox. But anyways, let me know your thoughts on this down below. MSNBC is horrible.